and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another tremendous installment from very high above all the puerile, insipid, and perfidious forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Wednesday. Welcome back from a brief hiatus. Thank you very much for putting up with me going to Denver and attempting to watch a Texas Rangers game.
I enjoyed it. It was warm and dry.
I'm sure you did. We
drive.
We enjoyed it. We just did not enjoy the 38 degrees and pouring rain.
You need those. What do they call those rooms in the glass? There's a
like the luxury box.
Yeah, we used to get to stay up in there once in a while.
It would have been warmer.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, where we were sitting
the drinks are better.
I needed flippers. But it was a fun time. I don't think that the lovely Christine and I have been that cold in a really long time. We got back to the car. Unfortunately, we were able to park pretty close to the stadium. We got there pretty early because I thought, well, it might be kind of fun to watch batting practice. And they didn't do too much of that because it was pouring rain. But we got back to the car and my hands were shaking so much I couldn't drive, so we had to wait for the car to warm up a little bit.
A little tiny piece of advice regarding batting practice.
Yeah.
If you ever get invited by the local quilt maker society to come watch batting practice.
No, don't do that.
Skip it.
Yeah, skip that. Well, anyway, here's a couple pictures of the game. Here is the lovely Christine and I. And you can see, like, those are the best seats that I've ever had. Yeah. And we were on row number 1, right up at the third baseline.
Those are the seats where you don't put your fingers through the mesh.
No, you don't. No.
A line drive could take it a while.
But you can see, like, we were right down there, right on the field. But like I say, it was pouring rain, so it wasn't. Oh wait, no, that's the next story.
Pouring rain and what? 25 degrees.
Well, no, I think it was like 38. But man, when the wind is blowing and you're soaking wet,
can't get warm.
Yeah, I think maybe there was like 2,000 people in the stadium.
I spent the coldest winter of my life in South Carolina. And it was because of that. I don't know that it ever got to freezing, but high humidity.
Oh, yeah.
Wind was always blowing a little bit and rain, and you just could not get warm.
Yeah, well, the bummer of the deal is the Rockies ended up winning that game 7-6. We left in the 7th inning because they were down 3 runs, and we were soaked to the gills. And, right when we walk out, the Rangers decided to make a run for it. But they redeemed themselves last night in whooping them 10-0. So
you just got to only watch DVR games. You seem to be there first.
So that brings up another question. You know, this is the third Rangers game that Christine and I have watched, and they have lost every single time. So we're wondering maybe if we just shouldn't go to Rangers games. I don't know. I mean, it could be.
Could be an omen.
It could be. All right, so we should probably talk about the I don't know about if it's the elephant in the room, but there were a number of primaries last night, and Thomas Massey ended up losing. I don't really have any thoughts one way or the other on Thomas Massie. I tend to think that he kind of took up the mantle of Ron Paul. Of course, they always called Ron Paul Dr. No. And, you need that sort of mentality in any legislative body. But when you pick a fight with a guy that has coattails as long as Donald Trump, you should probably expect to lose. Now, I've seen a lot of comments on social media, and in mainstream media, that this is the end of the GOP. Well, I don't think so. I think that elections have consequences, and some presidents have longer coattails than others. If you were aligned with Joe Biden in that midterm, well, you probably were not going to fare too well, and most of them didn't. Well, this time around, you have a president that is extraordinarily popular, and if you pick a public fight with him, it doesn't really matter what it's over. Well, then you should probably expect to lose.
You just said extraordinarily popular. Why do you say that? Because I would disagree. I don't think he is.
Oh, I think he is. If you look at any of the polls, like last week, we played a Harry Enton from CNN. Said that he has over 86% support in the GOP. Okay, so his overall approval rating is, somewhere in the, mid to low 40s.
We might be talking apples and oranges then, but
well, maybe we are, but I think that you can look at last night's midterms and say that, the man's got some pretty long coattails. Why do you disagree?
You mentioned it earlier before we came on the air. The pendulum swings both ways.
Sure.
And the pendulum swung pretty hard to get him elected. And I'm talking basically all voters. And then there begins to be pushback. And of course, you got the press jumping into that. And things pile up. And there's bound to be as you called it, an Empire Strikes Back moment.
Well, I think, so I think you've got a couple of different things going on there. First, I think you need to look at, what historically happens during the midterm election, and almost without fail, the party in power, the party that has the presidency ends up not faring so well in the midterm elections. But I guess a secondary thing too is that if you look at presidents, in the middle of their term, typically, there are exceptions. Of course, there are exceptions to everything, but typically their approval rating is somewhere around the 40s. But I think the most telling poll was that CNN one that we covered last week. Said that overall his support in the GOP is 86, 85%.
Yeah, I think among politically active people,
sure.
And you'd see the same thing here among politically active people. The Freedom Caucus and conservatives are very well thought of. Once you step outside that realm, it may or may not be another story.
See, I think that you're listening to the loudest megaphone. On either side, you have two groups of people that are very, very loud. In Wyoming, it tends to be the media. And it said they're in control of the left megaphone. But I think when you get out to, in general voters, like if another election were held today for president, Trump would win.
Well,
without a doubt.
I haven't done any specific door-to-dooring, although I am talking to a lot of people. And I think there's enough animosity aroused that, and as it gets brutal, there's two things going to happen. Some people are going to change their mind, and then a lot of people are just going to tune out.
Yeah, maybe so. But there again, it is a midterm election. You don't have a presidential ticket.
And it's his second term.
Well, yeah. Your comment was about turnout. Yeah. Okay, so it's a midterm election. Typically, the turnout for those elections is quite a bit lower than for a presidential election. But I think that, again, when you get outside of those two big megaphones, I think what you find is that he's still very, very popular. It would be pretty difficult to convince me otherwise. Now, let's talk about Thomas Massie and that whole group. You have a group of people within the GOP. I saw a post yesterday maybe the day before, but called it denominational conservatism.
Yeah.
And I find that to be an interesting term in that there are a number of groups in all political parties really that have different belief systems. And inside the GOP, you've got one that I think I would absolutely call them like a new incarnation of neoconservatives. Of course, the neoconservatives were, the best way to describe those type of people would be your Liz Cheney Republicans. That they're not really conservative. That when you boil it all down, they're more in favor of the establishment than anything. And then you have more traditional conservatives. And I think if you look at like even some of the more conservative writers in Wyoming media, they're still very much on Trump's side. So I mean, yeah, I think that he's pretty conservative. Now, the other issue you brought up was the Freedom Caucus. Okay, there is a virulent strain of Freedom Caucus derangement syndrome floating around in Wyoming. And most of that is perpetuated by the media. There's another piece that I'm about to beat you over the head with, in the I believe it's in the Cowboy, but it is a loud voice on the Wyoming left. We talked about this all last week. Name one thing that the Freedom Caucus has done that you disagree with.
Yeah, it's not. I'm not saying it's rational or even based on fact. It's just part of it is the pendulum swinging, and then with that momentum, you give it a good hard push, which is what the press is doing, and a number of a certain element of society are more than glad to jump on the bandwagon. There are some people that just like to. There are people that like to pretend that they're not the local sports team's fan because they want to be different. And they're contrarians to a degree, and just there's a lot of dynamics that go in there. You can make yourself crazy. But.
So, all right. So here's what you're referring to. Okay. So you're looking at, and you just, again, jump in here if you think I'm off base on this one. But I think what you're reacting to is the overwhelming animosity towards the Freedom Caucus that you see in the media. Let me give you an example here. So from the... here it is. So it's a letter to the editor in the Cowboy, and this is what the guy says. I won't even mention his name because, his name is Peter Howard. But anyway, he says, quote, "The Freedom Caucus angers a lot of traditional Republicans and encourages crossover voting, not because they're too conservative, but because they're trying to consolidate government power over decisions better left to individuals and communities, simultaneously micromanaging and undermining the institutions that made Wyoming communities unique and positive places to grow up, like strong public education, avenues for non-toxic political participation, and a libertarian respect for the individual." All right, so the Freedom Caucus is angering traditional Republicans. But let me ask you this, Ken. Do you really think that the so-called traditional Republicans, the establishment types that have been in power for the last 30 years, do you think that they really make up the majority of Wyoming Republicans?
They don't, but a majority of Wyoming Republicans call themselves friends with some of them. They are, I would call it like a ribbon or a vein of society, and that strata. And you watch what they're doing. It's interesting. They're not bringing back very many new people. There are a few that they're trying to kind of generate interest in. But most of what they're doing is bringing back has-beens.
Yes.
And they're appealing to this, tradition. This is the way it's always been done. These are the people, the tried and the true. You know where they stand. They're not a bunch of carpetbaggers and all the other things. And almost everything that they say about the Freedom Caucus is a distortion of truth.
Of course.
But say it loud enough and long enough.
Okay, so when the Freedom Caucus first started, well, before even the Freedom Caucus, when we finally had a couple of conservatives in the House of Representatives, it was a group of 5 or 6. And we're talking 2015, 2016. Yeah. That number grew to 10 or 12. And then in the next election, it grew to 16. And then in the next election, it was over 20. And that's kind of where and that's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah.
But if you're correct, right, if you're right, that procession, that progression
That
of
momentum, maybe.
momentum, okay, that's a better word. That's the one I was looking for. But if you're correct, then all of a sudden, all of that momentum that put conservatives into power in the House of Representatives has come to a dead stop, and I don't think that it has. And the reaction you're seeing from all of these has-beens, and I don't think that the people most of the people that have filed or run for office thus far are necessarily has-beens. However, there is a large percentage of them that are very much political insiders in their own community.
They're members of boards.
And and there's nothing wrong with that. But they're people that have become very much entrenched.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you didn't think that this election was going to be the Empire Strikes Back, you are sadly mistaken, because in the last election, those establishment types thought that they pretty much had everything covered, that it was going to be, that everything was going to go the same way, that they were going to win their election, and they got beat handily. Now, if you're right, then all of that has come to a stop, that you guys have pissed off the entire world, and the election is done for. And I don't think that's the case at all. Let me give you...
I think you're putting words into my mouth.
Hold on. Let me give you an example. Candace Machado in Natrona County. Now, you'll have to get in the Wayback Machine, but this is the lady... excuse me, I didn't mean to misuse the word lady, but I did an episode on the podcast. This Machado woman, she took a trip to Nepal. And in Nepal... she tried to screw over an innkeeper, didn't want to pay her bill, and I ended up talking to this business owner in Nepal, and did an episode about her. But this is the person that put pride flags all around City Hall in Natrona County. And then, that she got quite a bit of pushback, and she ended up having to resign. Well, now she's running for county commissioner. If your logic is correct, then people like that lost their seat for one reason or another are running again, and then they're going to get elected. I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's the case at all.
I will prognosticate just a bit, if you'll allow me.
Sure.
I think if you watch a pendulum swing, it goes pretty fast through the bottom, it gets up to the top, and it slows down, and then it hits a high mark, and then it slowly starts to go back the other way. I think what's going to happen is, I think that conservatives have kind of reached an ebb. They have reached a bit of a high water mark. But as it starts to slide back, I think they're going to be so anxious.
Notice you can hear me filling my coffee.
Yeah.
I'm trying to.
You can see you too.
I know, isn't it great?
As it starts to slink back the other way, they're going to be so relieved. They're so angry right now, and we took them by surprise. They didn't see this coming. And so I think there's going to be a swing, just like we saw in Obama, where they overplayed their hand.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to radically overplay their hand, and in 2 years, that groundswell is going to push back again the other way. That's just what I see.
No, I don't think the pendulums do stop and starts. I think they swing one way. Now, you're right in one respect. That eventually, if you get a hard swing one way, the pendulum always goes back the other way. But the question is, how long does it take to get there? And I would contend that this election is not that. There are a lot of people, and a good predictor of that, I think, is Dave Simpson in the Cow Pie. Okay, he's like the only conservative.
Yeah.
Well, him and Jonathan Lang are the only two columnists that are in any way conservative. But I think that he's still got it, right? I mean, you look at his last column, and it was basically, you guys are out of your mind. You have Freedom Caucus derangement syndrome. Now, what happened when we had Trump's first election, and then he got beat, okay? And now we could assume that there was Trump derangement syndrome so high that he was never going to win. Now, of course, the incumbent wasn't that great. They had a crappy candidate in Kamala Harris. But still, I don't think it would have mattered. They could have put up any Democrat, and the results would have still been the same. And I think that's where we're at. And I also would argue...
Well, you're actually making my argument.
No, I don't think I am.
Okay.
I would also argue that when voters make a radical shift, which they have, and at least with the House of
In the
Representatives,
last 10 years, yeah.
when voters make a radical shift, I don't think that those core people that made that election, they don't change their minds overnight.
I would agree with that totally.
And-
Our base is as solid as ever.
Yep, and it just so happens that your base is a lot bigger than the other side. Now, why is it?
I hope that you're right. I think
I
both
think I am.
bases are at about 30-35%.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think the vast majority of Wyoming Republicans are not those that listen to Jake in the cow pie every
Well, that's
morning.
true.
Okay, they're not the
That's
people that are going to take word for word everything that is written in the cow pie. I mean,
A lot of them don't even know about the cow pie.
well, many of them are as disgusted with it as you and I are, and I think that most people look at that and they can see right through it. And I've got a piece here that we're going to cover after a while, talking about school budgets, and I think it'll illustrate my point pretty well. By the way, I need to give you a heads up on what's going to happen on today's program. We got to talking, and I didn't even give you the preview.
Rundown.
Yeah. So here in about 9 minutes, actually, he's waiting right now. But Representative Tony Locke is going to join the program. Tony is a representative from Natrona County. It's been a while since we've had him on the show. So we're going to talk to him in a few minutes. And then at 9 o'clock, we're going to be joined in studio by candidate for the United States House of Representatives, Frank Chapman. He's an interesting fellow, and so we'll get to know him about 9 o'clock. And then at 9:30, we'll have Representative Pepper Ottman. So we got a full dance card today.
Pepper's supposed to be in studio too, but we'll see. She's at a meeting right now, and if that runs long, that may
We'll
affect
see.
our plans.
And you know what? Since Tony's waiting, let's go ahead and take our first break.
Will do.
And when we come back, we'll visit with Representative Tony Locke.
Are you watching what's happening in our country and asking, what can I do? Join the John Birch Society in Salt Lake City, June 6th, for a powerful one-day conference. The day includes a host of respected speakers, 2 meals, and meaningful connections. You'll gain clarity on the issues and walk away with practical steps you can take to your community. Reserve your seat today at jbs.org/SLC26. That's jbs.org/SLC26.
One of those speakers at the Salt Lake City event will be yours truly. That's right, my friends. I'm one of the keynote speakers at the JBS 2026 conference. So join me in Salt Lake City if you want to see me. The following ad was paid for by Brent Bean for governor.
You won't find him leading a horse out of a barn or leaning against a corral with the sun setting behind him, because Wyomingites don't need a candidate who creates a good photo op. What you will find is a hard-working, experienced leader who believes Wyoming should always come first. A conservative grounded in strong values and steady principles. Ready to lead Wyoming the right way. Brent Bean for governor.
Today's program is also brought to you by Morton Buildings. If you're in the market for any type of building for your property, you need to call Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They're the best in metal building construction, and they've been doing it longer than anybody else around. So it doesn't matter if it's a garage or a barn or maybe something bigger, like a roping arena or maybe a giant warehouse for your business. The 2 guys you need to call first are Marcos and Jesse. Again, their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out on their website, mortonbuildings.com. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Wednesday. Thank you for joining, my friends. Now, here in just a second, we're going to talk to another one of my favorite representatives, a guy named Tony Locke from Casper. This is the guy that, if you want to talk about somebody that is really interested in fixing your taxes, he's the man. I mean, I have no idea how many amendments that guy has offered, but it has been a lot.
I have to say this about Tony before he gets on there.
Yeah, now that he can't respond, I have him muted.
I don't want to respond. Tony's my brother from another mother.
Don't ever say that again. Yeah, that does not fit you. All right. Well, let's welcome to the program, Tony Locke. Tony, welcome to Cowboy State Politics Live.
Hey, David, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate this opportunity to get together again and chat about the things that are important to the people of Wyoming. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome. I love having
you on. I won't hold it against Ken for all his craziness, but God bless.
As long as he doesn't utter that phrase ever again, we're fine. All right, Tony. Well, it's been a while since you've been on the show, a couple of years, I think. Why don't you take a minute or two and tell my audience about yourself?
Well, as you've kind of stated, well, let me first say that I really want to thank the people of the House District 35 for, and just say that I've been honored to serve House District 35 for the last 4 years. And they have just blessed me with this opportunity. As many of you know, I came in kind of with a lot of those very hardcore, I wouldn't say hardcore, those conservative values of pro-life, Second Amendment, many of those things. But one of my priorities has been, we don't have a healthy population if we don't make sure we leave money in the pockets of the individuals. Leaving money on the kitchen table has been my goal since the day I came in. As I knocked doors that very first year, the people said, man, my property taxes are killing me. My property taxes, I'm getting to the point I'm going to lose my house. I heard that over and over again. So this has been a position that I've taken, and one of my top priorities is where are the most important places for me to leave money in people's pockets. We have a strong state when the people are strong. When not only the people, but even the small businesses, and that's property tax reform and relief has been one of my biggest pushes, along with other very important things, obviously from a core value perspective. So that has really been my goal. I want to again thank the people of House District 35 for allowing me to serve them for the last 4 years, and moving forward, I look forward to continuing to serve them in this next session if they see fit.
All right, fair enough. I find the argument with property taxes. I mean, a lot of people, they hear the word taxes and their eyes just kind of glaze over. But I find it interesting in a couple of respects. One of those is that there is a disconnect between what is actually happening and what people are being told is happening. For most of us, we just get our property tax bill in the mail, and it goes up every year. And there's the only thing that we're told is, well, property values went up, and so, you got to pay more. Your property is worth more. But on the other side, like there's a great piece that we're going to cover, well, maybe we'll get to it today, but by Wyoming by the numbers. And my pal B. Alfred Marshall, he's pointed out that the state of Wyoming has over-collected billions of dollars worth of taxes. And what I mean by over-collected is that government should never collect more money or take more money than is absolutely necessary to fund the necessary functions of government. But in Wyoming, we've overtaxed by billions and billions of dollars. I mean, and so, that disconnect is, how do you, and this is a good question for you, I think. Like, how do you make that argument? I mean, you got a whole bunch of people. I've got a stack of stuff right here of government agencies saying they're underfunded and they're going to have to lay people off. But on the other end, way more money has been taken from Wyoming citizens than was absolutely necessary. So how do you make that argument, Tony?
So it's kind of interesting. So the concept has always been, at least this is the perspective of the people that believe more and more taxation, has been, man, if we can build up this pool of revenue, so let's just talk about state savings, somewhere between probably 14 and 18 billion dollars of, as you said, over-collected funding. Some people, you'll hear the number $30 billion, but some of that's operating budget as you look at some of that. But let's just say it's somewhere between 14 and 18 billion. The concept has always been, hey, if we create this savings account making money, that will help pay the taxes for the people. The concept has at some level worked to do that, but at the end of the day, you make a good point, which is, are we continuing to over collect? And the truth is, government, when they have the money, restricting spending is the hardest thing for government to actually do. When that's in it's funny, when that money's in your wallet, it's always funny how quickly it disappears from there. And so really, controlling government spending, you stop and think about it, we don't have a tax problem, we have a spending problem, and then we have to continue to push the taxes forward. That has always been the biggest argument that I have, that many of us conservatives have put forward, is let's control government spending and let's keep government doing what is the proper role of government. But when you have those few extra bucks in your pocket, sometimes it's easy to slip outside that boundary of proper role.
It always fascinates me how fast Benjamins turn into Jacksons and then turn into Washingtons. I don't, by the way, it's not very often that I have Benjamins in my pocket, but.
There's something interesting there in what you said, Tony. And we're seeing it all across the state, where all of these little local agencies or whatever are saying, man, we just don't have enough left. They have enjoyed over the last few years phenomenal growth in income. And what that shows you, now that as soon as it backs off just a few percentage points, they're having to lay people off, is they've gone and spent every dime coming to them. Now, even that is a bit of a misnomer, because a lot of these agencies have stashed monies away in reserves. But actually both are true. They have enough to make reserves, and they have expanded and increased. Now, this isn't true for every county and every town, but in a large degree, that's what happened. So as soon as things back off a little bit, now they're screaming, we can't do this anymore.
Well, let me give you guys an example. And Ken, I meant to ask you about this a little bit later on in the show, but since we have Tony, maybe you guys can both weigh in on it. I heard a story last night from Lincoln County that their weed and pest does not have enough money to spray for weeds. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, but didn't we put a whole bunch of money into weed and pest this last legislative session?
We're each looking at each other.
Yeah, I know.
Answer this one.
Kind of a curveball, but.
Yeah, I don't know. That is a bit of a curveball for me. I can't remember. I believe that we did, but quite honestly, I can't remember.
Well,
exactly
it was wrapped up in fire response. A lot of weed stuff there. 98 million. We didn't give them everything they asked for, but we spent 98 million on fire recovery, which included a lot for spraying cheatgrass.
Now, here's why I bring that up. Like, the story I heard from Lincoln County is that, well, they've decided to pay for health benefits for some of their weed and pest officials. Well, because they're paying for health benefits, they don't have enough money to spray weeds. And now they're not even going to spray like the gravel pits. And I mean, it amazes me when we have so much money at the state level and counties and municipalities they're receiving more money than they ever have. And yet, weird, they say they can't afford all of the things that they pay for. And I think that this is just another example of when you have money, you spend money, and you create agencies, and you expand services, and then weird, you find out that you can't afford all of that stuff.
That's what happened right here in Sheridan. There are things that government is supposed to be doing. They should be paying prosecutors and the like, because that's a mandated topic. they didn't do that. They built a $3 million flower pot. And
Right.
that's what we're seeing around there is some of the choices are not the best choices.
Okay, so we know that we overcollect money, and I'll later on today I'll publish that article on the Open Range Record from Wyoming by the numbers, so you can see it. But what's the solution? We know that Wyoming citizens are being taxed to death. I know we are. My family is. So what's the solution, guys? Tony?
Well, let me talk first about what some general numbers look like, just because it will give people a good perspective of, and I'm going to use residential property tax as kind of a basis, because as you guys know, I've run many bills and we've pushed very hard to try to get residential property tax relief. So what people don't understand is in 2019, the state collected about $386 million of residential property tax, okay? Between 2016 and I believe it was about 2025, that went up from $386 million to about $630 million of property tax, just to give you a little bit of a feel. And I might be a little bit off on a couple of those numbers, but my point is, people's residential property taxes went up roughly that 69-70%-ish. Not across every place in the state, but statewide, that was the impact people saw across the state. So you talk about that. So it was interesting you brought up special districts like weed and pest and things like that. What's interesting is you think about in many cases, in many of these districts and in many of these counties, those property taxes saw that either anywhere between, say, 40 to 70% increase over that time frame. But now all of a sudden, when we try to come in with residential property tax relief of any kind, let's just say the 25% exemption, all of a sudden it's, oh my goodness, all my money's gone. Well, reality is, look at the gains that many of these districts have seen, and it goes back to what one of you said before. They've spent every penny they had where they should have been wise, not spending everything you have, but been smart about how you budgeted your funds. And that's what we're seeing. Now, what's the right answer for property tax? It gets to be a complex issue. Many of the bills we've passed so far have been what I refer to as property tax relief, and really short-term property tax relief. I want to give you an example. Everybody says, oh, we've done all the property tax work we need to do because we put a 4% cap on the increase and we gave you 25%. Well, the truth is, at 4%, how quickly does the 25% vanish again, right? So we gave short-term relief. So I believe there's a number of solutions being put out there. I have been a proponent of what has been referred to as acquisition value. I try to refer to it as fair market value at time of purchase, for example. I have been a big fan of that approach. I know there's some complexities to that, but we're trying to move in a direction, moving in a direction from short-term relief to long-term reform. That's really, truly where we have to go, because anytime we come in and say, okay, we're going to give you a 25% break, that vanishes within a few years if you continue to increase at 4% or 5%. In fact, the number I like to throw out to people, if you take 5% increase every year, some people who got 70% in 1 year will say, man, I'll take the 5%, right? But I always tell people, think about this. If you only went up 5% a year, that means in 14.3 years, your property taxes doubled. And in just a little over 28 years, just short of 29 years, you quadrupled your property tax. So just about the time you paid off your mortgage, you've replaced it with property tax. So do you ever really truly own your home if we don't do something better?
Well, that, and I love this disconnect. I got an email last night. Kurt Meyer's running for re-election. Now, Treasurer Meyer has done a phenomenal job in investing Wyoming's money. I mean, he's done great returns. In fact, most of the revenue of the state comes from our investments. But there seems to be, we see gains on our investments, but yet the money that people are taxed never goes down. I mean, it's like they constantly go up. And you would think, and you mentioned it earlier, Tony, that the whole idea is that we put all this money away and that eventually it pays the taxes for Wyoming citizens. But that's not what we're seeing. What's been happening is earnings from investments go up, and so do property taxes. And it should be a different ratio, but it's just not. So the question is, if you're elected, what are your plans to kind of even that balance out a little bit, or make it balance out?
And I will go to kind of the program, or kind of the approach that I've been trying to take over time, trying to go with property tax reform. So if you go back to what you just said, the concept was originally, hey, listen, we're going to save this money, we're going to invest it, and we're going to have it start replacing the burden of the people. So I'm going to reword, maybe they didn't say it that way, but that's my interpretation. We say, we're going to start relieving the burden of the people based on these revenue gains, right? So if we did that, this is exactly where I'm trying to go with property tax relief, or excuse me, reform. Because ultimately, perfect example, Senator Hicks brought a great bill. And the bill was, you know what, we're going to have the state, instead of the people paying for the 25 state mills that have been imposed for schools, we're going to have the state impose those. Stop and think about that. That is actually a concept for property tax reform where we say, based on the fact that we've stored up 14 or 18 billion and we've
squirreled away.
Now all of a sudden we start doing what they discussed as the original intent was. Now that will start bearing the burden of some of the taxes on the people. That's one approach of many that allows us to start doing what we promised to do. Since we've saved that money, how does it now start lowering our bills for our people? And quite frankly, where do we find tax breaks for our small businesses and our other businesses? Because the concept that somehow government taking the money and then using the Wyoming Business Council to give it back is such a wrong approach. Leaving money on the kitchen table and leaving money in the boardroom of the small businesses. That's what's going to make our state better. That's where the money is going to be used for the better purpose.
Well, the person that knows best how to spend your money is you. I mean, it's definitely not government. And anytime, and I can tell you this for a fact, like if you own a business, the more taxes you have to pay, the more regulation forms you have to fill out, that's money that comes out of your pocket that you can't pay an employee, that the employee can't go pay their rent, that landlord can't go, fix up his building or whatever. I mean, it has ripples all the way through the system. And it just seems to me that, Cheyenne, it's a never-ending tax environment that we just have to continue to tax more, take as much as we can, and far be it for anybody to say maybe we ought to reduce services. So, Tony, you're running for re-election. This is your third term. What are you running on? If you get elected, what do you want to do?
Well, from a core platform perspective, I still remain focused on, life, Second Amendment, and really relentless defense for personal and financial liberty for our people. The main issues that I'm going to continue to push forward, I have been, as you have said, a very strong advocate of property tax relief and reform, not only for residential property taxes, but for our small businesses and personal property taxes, for even for our core industries. I ran a bill 2 years ago to basically relieve some of the taxes for oil and gas transportation. And these are just little areas where we want to continue to leave money in our businesses' pockets and give them the opportunity to grow. And so that remains a big area for me. Part of me protecting people's income and trying to leave money on the kitchen table has always been pushback on utility costs that have continued to skyrocket. So I'm in the Rocky Mountain Power area, and we saw over 30% over the course of about 18 months increases. I fought against those increases. I continue to watch those very closely. It looks like we're going to get another small increase here. At least there's another rate case out pending now. And I continue to push back on that. Where can we put legislation in place, whether it's relieve these companies of burdensome legislation that's costing them money, that's ultimately costing the people money. So this is another area I continue to push back. Where can we make sure that utility costs level out and we're not getting hammered? For example, we have to make sure the these mega data centers that are coming in, we have to make sure that the increased power requirements that they're imposing on our state as they come in, we have to make sure that does not fall on the people. The ratepayers cannot bear the burden of those. Those people need to bear their own burden. And those are just a few of the major areas that I have concerns with. So staying close with what legislation do we need to put in place for utilities to basically defend the people's pocketbook is what I usually try to let people know, as well as we need to move from these property tax relief approaches to true property tax reform. So this is not the hot topic every year. So a person can buy a house and predict what that cost is going to be, and ultimately make sure that people aren't paying taxes on unearned capital gains, which is not fair. That remains some of my biggest issues. Again, the other two items that will always fall on my list, I've always been part of election integrity and just making sure our elections are tight and secure. And then ultimately, we need to make sure we make sure our immigration laws are robust and properly support the state. But those are some of the main topics that I have run bills on. I will continue to pursue as a member of the Revenue Committee, if that continues to be the case. And but those are the topics that I will continue to push for the Wyoming people, because the truth is, I know it's probably been said here many, many times, but the truth is there's two ways to legislate. And you see this in the legislature all the time. There's two different groups of people. One group of people fighting tooth and nail to make sure that the government gets funded.
Yes.
Okay? And you hear all kinds of things like, oh, well, we only went up X percent, but that was inflation. The question I want to ask all the people of Wyoming and the people across House District 35, how many of your salaries have gone up with inflation?
Not very
Right?
many.
And this remains the major issue that we need to continue to keep in mind. It is not our job to, is it our job to make sure government gets funded? Sure, it is. But is that our priority, or is it making sure that the people and the small businesses have enough money to continue to do what they do best? And as you said, they know better than anyone on how to spend money. Government doesn't. So that's generally where I continue to pursue, and I'm very optimistic with the new conservatives, with all of the conservatives. Wyoming has continued to expand that group of great people, and those people are defending these people's freedoms and pocketbook.
All right, now you've got an opponent, and he is his name's Christopher Drzang. I'm going to try to get him on the program, by the way.
Okay.
I think that would be a fascinating conversation. But he's a school administrator, and so let's talk about school funding for a little bit. That's
Okay.
I think that's probably going to be one of the bigger issues in your race. So are Wyoming schools underfunded? I've got a couple pieces in my stack of stuff here that says that they are. Is that the truth?
Are they underfunded? Well, their funding has continued to go up over every year, and we are our per student funding across the state is very high. I don't know the exact number; it kind of varies, obviously, across the state, but we pay anywhere from I believe around $20,000 a student, much higher than almost any state across the country. It's kind of interesting. I had a relative who worked in the Arizona school system, and they were funding kids in the range of $7,000 to $8,000 per student, and we fund at the $20,000 per student. So are we underfunded? I do not believe so. And to be honest with you, the state, even if property tax income is short, the state continues to fund that growth in our school system. Another important aspect of that is to understand that the student population is reducing over the last several years.
Yeah.
We've seen that reduce significantly, and I'm not an expert in that whole school funding model, but I do know for a fact our student numbers are reducing.
Well, and that's an interesting discussion too, because our enrollment numbers are going down, and they have been for the last several years anyway. But administration and staff continues to go up, and it's an interesting paradox to me. You have fewer students, which you would think would mean you need fewer people supervising those students and educating them, but that's not what's happening. We're actually hiring more administrators, and the number of students that they have to administer is going down.
One of the things that we tried to get done with UW was, I think if the number's right, they had like 3 staff people for every student.
Which is crazy.
And now they're seeing the reductions that have gone through the grade schools and everything are happening to them. So their enrollment is down, and they're screaming, we're 15 million short. We're going to have to lay people off. If you have fewer students, you should need fewer staff.
Well, you would think so.
But the idea is once you've got that job, I guess you never need to worry about it.
So how do we, Tony? How do we bridge that gap between? Look, you have fewer students to deal with. You have fewer students to educate. We're still funding them at the same amount of money or higher. I mean, the escalators. I think that last number I heard is every year you guys don't have to do anything, and funding goes up about $200 million every year. Or every biennium, excuse me. So how do you make that argument to say, look, you don't have to spend that much money because you got fewer kids, and yet on the other hand, everybody says, oh no, we have to spend more money. The more money means better education. How do you make that argument?
Well, and let me back into that answer to that question. That argument is from a government perspective, because you got to look at your schools as a government. They're funded. So their argument is, hey, there's been inflation and we need more. But if you really start looking at this, in fact, I just recently saw a chart that put as government dollars have gone up, as their budget has gone up, what's happened to how it's spent. And there was a separation of how it was spent on administration versus focus on the classroom. And it's quite interesting. As the dollars are going up, the increase in the administration component has skyrocketed compared to how much spending is happening from a classroom. And by saying that, I'm talking about to the teachers, from a teacher perspective. And so that's been one of those hot topics, is said, hey, why is administration administrative costs continuing to shoot up while what's being spent on teachers and the classroom isn't going up as rapidly? So this is one of the things that with the recalibration, I thought, and this was something that really I think the legislature was pushed here. Because if you remember last year, we said, hey, you know what? We're going to put an extra 8.5% in the budget for teachers. So what did most districts do? I think one district gave actually 10%.
Yeah, that was one. It was Sublette County.
Right, and I think there was only 1 or 2 others that gave any raises, both much smaller than the 8.5%. And there were many districts that basically said, our teachers really don't need a raise. And what did that drive the legislature to do? The legislature was sending a signal that says, the classroom is the important part. Your job is education. And the school district said, you know what, we know better than you. And so that's what pushed the recalibration to start to silo. Hey, you know what, we're going to silo for the teachers. It didn't make the administrators happy, but it's because of those curves that show skyrocketing increases in administration rather than in the classroom that drove us to that.
Now we've got, hold on, I don't mean to interrupt you, Tony. We've got a few minutes left. But one critical piece of this conversation, I think, is test scores. We've been talking a lot about money, funding administration, that goes up. Every year we jack up the price of education by $100 million. But our test scores, I mean, they're, as Ken puts it, they're the cream of the crap. I mean, we're basically not teaching half of our students how to read.
It is true when you see the statistics, and you will see the statistics where they compare us to other states, and you'll see, oh well, we're better. But when you really
by a
start
couple
looking
percentage points.
exactly. But when you really start looking at the percentages of our students that are succeeding, that are reading or doing math at grade level, the numbers are not going up, okay, are not that high. And this is exactly one of the problems that we were looking to try to resolve. We need to start moving those statistics in the right direction, and so far they have not moved in the right direction.
For math and science, they're below 50%.
Yeah.
And for language arts, it's about 54%.
I mean, it's super depressing if you ask me. I mean, it's all right, Tony. Well, I got to run, my friend. But if people want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Sure. My website is is at lock4yo.com. I would love for you to come and just reach out, ask me a question, and we'll be getting back with you. And then I have a Facebook that is Tony at Lock4Yo. And please reach out. I would love to hear from folks. And again, I want to ask House District 35 for your vote moving into this election season. And I'm honored to serve you, and I look forward to continuing to serve you in the next couple of years. And David and Ken, thank you for having me on.
All right, appreciate it, Tony. We'll have you back, as the election goes on. But thank you very much for your time.
You betcha. You guys have a blessed day.
You too. All right. Well, that was Representative Tony Locke from House District 35 down in Casper. And Tony, I mean, if you want to know anything about taxes, he's your man. But we're going to go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we'll visit with Frank Chapman, who is running for the U.S. House of Representatives. Back in a minute. I know that you think it's spring and that the weather is just going to continue to warm up and you don't have to worry about snow or ice or 30-degree temperatures anymore. In case you've forgotten, this is Wyoming, my friend, and that sort of thinking doesn't work here. 1 minute, it could be 75 and sunny, and 10 minutes later, snow. Whatever the weather, you need a pair of socks that'll keep your feet cool and dry even on the hottest of summer days. And if you happen to run into that spring snowstorm, you'll stay nice and toasty warm. Well, your feet anyway. To get you a pair, go to the website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. These are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election.
Siberia,
Nova Scotia.
I'm definitely moving to Canada.
Straight to hell.
Iceland.
France.
Asia's pretty cool.
And has the last year and a half been more than you could bear? Well, if it has, you've come to the right place. Call my friend Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy state politics is only going to get stronger. This program is expanding faster Cowboy State Politics Podcast. This program, Cowboy State Politics Live, and now the Open Range Record. Welcome back to the program, my friends. Thank you for watching this morning. Well, thank you for everything you do for the show. Joining us in the studio is a candidate for the United States House of Representatives. His name is Frank Chapman. Frank, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm glad you could drive all the way over here from Jackson.
I actually had a great time. When I was coming out of Shell, Wyoming, over the mountains, I ran into a herd of about 13 to 15 moose.
I've heard there's a herd over there.
It was amazing. And, there's a big bull in charge and, just
Sure.
staring at me, but it was just really a great drive. Had a great time.
All right, so everybody gets the same treatment when you
Sure.
come on the show. And so why don't you take a minute or two and tell my audience about yourself?
Sure. I'm from Moran, Wyoming. I moved there about 11 years ago and bought the Heart 6 Ranch. I grew up and was born with horses, American quarter horses, and I absolutely love it. I've got 130 horses out there.
130?
Yeah, 130. It's probably one of the only places that you could ever have a horse herd and do anything with them. We do a lot of rides for people. If you love horses, it's a great place to go. Later in life, I've become, a rancher. I took the test and was admitted as licensed outfitter in the state. I've always been a businessman. I've got 3 sons. But really, it's a passion for me to be in Wyoming, and it's a pleasure and an honor. I can't tell you how much I love the area. It's just everything I did as a kid. It's just more of. It's just an extreme, and it's just great.
So what brought you to Wyoming?
Well, I came out 30 years ago, and as I said, I fell in love with the place and went horseback riding and thought, wow, wouldn't it be amazing just to own one of these ranches? Now,
Okay.
I didn't have any money. I mean, I was in law school. Yeah, actually just graduated, just gotten in the bar, and with a little bit of maybe God in my life, a lot of hard work. You one day you wake up and you've got the resources and the money to buy something like Heart 6, and realize a dream like that, and just. One of the most pleasurable aspects of it for me is just to be able to wander around in the Bridger Teton. People
Right.
don't realize how big that is. You can ride 38 miles just to a hunting camp.
Right.
It takes you 13 hours, and the stuff you see back there is just amazing.
Well, it's a beautiful area, and every time I go to Jackson, which, you could pop up over that hill over Toady Pass, and you just see the Tetons. It's absolutely beautiful.
I think I skipped a little bit, further because I got excited about, the ranch. And you get
Yeah.
excited about seeing moose like that when in a herd. And it makes me sad a little bit, and I don't want to touch on this too much, that the Endangered Species Act has sort of perverted the number of predators in my area, and they've undercounted them. So, as we were talking about last night, I've had my bear incursions, and we used to have a herd of a moose over in Moran like that, and we don't anymore. And it's unfortunate. But the way that I got to the point where I could buy Heart 6 is that I represented the U.S. taxpayer as the trustee during the housing crisis in 2002 to 2008. And I've got an undergrad in accounting and then, the law degree. And as the trustee, I represented getting those houses that were foreclosed back to the American public. And, back then I didn't realize that our government had judicial overreach, that we had bureaucrats that were lining their own pockets. And we also have bureaucrats that mean very well, but the way they think is so much different than the values of Wyoming. So they bring those East Coast, New England values out here. And then they do things like say that, conservation should replace grazing, not realizing that they're going to cause intense inflation. That it becomes impossible for cowboys, which are great at doing it and not the fault at all of the problem that we have right now. But they don't realize that those decisions impact. So in my life, I had to sue the government over 20 times in order to retain my contracts and my right to work for the American public. And I uncovered somebody at the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, the actual, the secretary,
Right.
with a $500,000 bribe, and all my contracts stopped in one
Whoa.
day. And 2 of his underlings were convicted. A guy named McCloskey and another guy I never met. And I might as well name him. It's in the record, right?
Right.
So you can't do anything to me. And then Alfonso Jackson had to resign. I'm the bad Republican contractor that how dare I want to keep my contract.
Okay, so let's not to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
So why Congress? I mean, you go from, suing the government, protecting taxpayers, to going up and being part of the swamp. Why are you running?
I'm running because I've seen how bad it can be.
Okay.
And I don't think there's an adult in the room that understands it. I don't think there's an adult in the room that can go in and formulate legislation in order to make those positive changes. I think that you get a lot of performative politics with people doing silly things, and it's all about them being on the news or getting their soundbite or whatever because of their own ego. What I want to do is go to D.C. I want to take care of problems like overreach in the judicial system, and I've got a whole plan for that. Take care of the items like inflation that come out of the Green New Deal, where you just spend and flush so much money into the system. And then, I want to take care of constituent services. And I see in Wyoming more conflicts with the government. And I don't think the bureaucrats are dishonest in Wyoming at all. I think that they're to be respected. But I think that they have, people aren't efficient in what they're doing. They make, the East Coast, New England decisions that aren't right for Wyoming. And then we have to live with them. And you can be a giant mineral extraction company, an oil company, uranium, whatever it might be, and have attorneys and everyone else to spend a fortune. Or you can be the little rancher, the guy that's, the concessionaire on the Snake River that's fishing, and just get bullied. And you get bullied by Fortune 500 companies that want the contracts. The National Park Service has no reason not to keep those contracts with, the little guy, the outfitters, and, the people that I know and respect from the state. I mean, those are the toughest guys I've ever met. They're amazing. And so you see all these constituent issues, and I know that with my experience that I'm the best person to realize what's going on, to listen to your issue. And I'm smart enough to know how to write the letter and how to, to bring the case forward on your behalf. Yesterday, I went through Cody and was at a Hippie Cow Creamery, and these guys are under attack, man.
Oh, yeah.
And, some of the stuff is valid. You got to have a sink where you're going to make coffee because that's, a health law. But we want farm to table. We don't want our food from China. We want farm to table. We want to promote these people. And I think the three people in this room and everybody that's listening on the air is smart enough to know whether or not you want to try unpasteurized milk or not. There's definitely benefits.
I don't think we need a government bureaucrat telling us how to do that, or like what to drink or what to eat.
A little call out to the governor real quick. You could just sign a waiver and make that issue go away for that creamery, so you might want to do that.
No, he's not going to do that. Come on now.
I mean, we need to be able to make up our own minds on stuff, and we don't need bureaucrats telling us what to do.
Okay, so there's 10 people. Well, I mean, I don't know. There might be 27 people running for Congress. Who knows? But I think probably one of the biggest charges I've heard against you is you don't necessarily come from the most conservative place, or you don't live in the most conservative place. Let's put it that way. And so, how do you overcome the charge that you're the rich guy from Jackson that just wants to go to Congress?
I think there's another rich guy from Jackson that might want to go to Congress, but I think that I came out.
You're one of them.
I mean, 30 years ago, in Cleveland, Ohio, I was on the finance committee for the Republican Party. I was part of at Ohio University. I was, in the Republican Party way back before all these things were there. I've always been a conservative. I'm endorsed by CPAC, and the reason for that is I've known those guys for over 20 years. I know where their offices were when they were kids. I know where they used to work. I know their kids. I've been involved in this forever, and I'm not the person that's going to go up on top of a rooftop and perform and scream, do my song, but I am the person that's going to get things done, and I'm trained to do it. And I know how to do it. Okay.
But I think the core of my question was, I mean, obviously you're accomplished, lawyer, and you got a beautiful place over in Teton counties. But my question is, how do you relate to, the guy that is running a ranch over in Weston County? And, I mean, that's like two different worlds, I guess is what I'm saying. So how are you going to relate to, your everyday Wyoming citizen?
The guy in Weston County is going to have issues that he's going to agree with me when he hears me.
Okay.
That he knows that I'm the best person to handle those issues for him. He knows that I've suffered through the same things he does. One of the big problems facing, cowboys in the beef industry is the fact that that another administration decided that to take grazing rights away. There are allotments that I know of that are sitting there that aren't being used, and these people just won't release them. These are the issues that he needs to worry about. and I'm there with those issues, with him, fighting with him, and I enjoy helping people. I mean, it's truly my passion is to take an issue that he would have and bring it forth and be his partner in that issue.
All right, now you used the word conservative. What does that mean?
You know, we can go talk about MAGA, which is, you know, the phrase, or we can talk about America first. But I think that conservatism relates back to family values, and as such, you know, none of this nonsense about more than two sexes. None of, you know, that it's just something that drives me nuts. I think it's a whistle to make people show up and protest. It means strong borders. It means low unemployment so that people can take care of their families and keep that family unit together. You know, recessions cause families to break up. You know, issues like that cause terrible things to happen. You know, you've got low taxes. You know, just everything that will benefit the family is part of the conservative platform. And there's nothing that I don't agree with. I mean, we can go into, you know, the Second Amendment, and, you know, as an outfitter, I'd order a silencer, you know, and they want to call it a suppressor, but it's for my hunting rifle. There's no purpose to this other than, you know, keeping my ears from, you know, being damaged. And underneath the Biden administration, I applied for that, and it took me 2 years until Trump got back into office to get that delivered to me.
You were lucky.
Yeah. I mean,
it took a lot longer.
And I went to Congress. People went, nobody do anything, and you know, it's upsetting. But back to the conservatism, I've never wavered at all. I am who I am. I believe in what I believe in. I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm going to accept who you are. I'm not going to, you know, I mean, we're all a little judgy, but, you know, I'm not going to go out there and, again, I'm not going to perform. I'm just going to go right to what needs to be done and do it.
What's the biggest issue facing Wyoming citizens?
I think the biggest issue facing us right now is inflation.
Okay.
It is bad. I agree with President Trump that we need to take care of the nuclear problem with Iran. I had a conversation with Matt Gatz, of all people, regarding that when it first happened, and I looked at it as it was like ripping off a Band-Aid. If you go slow, it's going to be painful to get through the political process. You've got to keep going, and you've got to go faster and make Iran realize that they've lost. Right now, all they're trying to do is outlast the liberals in people that are angry, you know, to keep this going so that they can win based upon our lack of follow through. So we need to follow through and take care of that. So the biggest challenge to people here is inflation, and in order to fight inflation, we need people that understand fraud in government is our biggest expense.
Yeah.
It's again, people don't realize how bad it is. And there's a certain class of people in the swamp that aren't elected, but they always show up. The same people that tried to take my contract years ago some of them had been charged and resigned during the Reagan administration. And the underlings came back in the exact same way because they're bureaucrats to steal the money again. And it's not just isolated to there. It's all over government. So we need to crack down on that.
All right. I want to switch gears for you
sure.
a little bit. You talked about family values.
Mm-hmm.
So should women have a right to choose what to do with their baby?
Well, I'm 100% pro-life. And I don't, you know, you don't want to insult a bunch of people out there, but you say their baby. You know, hey, I think I was my own baby at one time, and I don't want anybody to abort me. And I think that, you know, there are, you guys, the other day on the show, you said how many, you had said how many abortions there are aggregate. It's like 50 million, isn't it?
It's more than that. It's like 64.
And you know, there's a disproportionate number of those that are black. And, you know, there's a lot of problems when you look into this that go further, and they're economic, and they're just sad. But the reality of the situation is nobody should be getting an abortion. And, you know, we shouldn't be killing babies. It's that simple.
Nope, fair enough.
It's a horrible topic, though. It really is.
My favorite subject, guns, things that go boom. Now, there's later on in the program, if we get to it, I've got a couple of stories about how a shooting happens, and then the victims of the shooting or you know, parents, they end up suing the gun manufacturer. Now, as you know, And with your business, I mean, firearms are kind of a integral part of your business. What are you specifically going to do to protect our Second Amendment rights if you're successful?
Well, have you back to this suppressor thing? I mean, how do we let the District of Columbia make them illegal? It's just, let's take, they're going to nibble and take each little increment away. So every single battle in the Second Amendment arena has to be fought. And you can't fight by executive order. You've actually have to win some cases. You've got to, make certain that you're probably, with the way Washington works in the Senate, you're probably not going to pass any legislation that brings forward makes our Second Amendment rights stronger. So we're going to have to fight hard. Luckily, we have a conservative Supreme Court, so I don't think that we're
sometimes.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, sometimes they get it completely wrong. I don't agree with the ruling in tariffs, but that's you need that in order to fight for your country. It's America first. It's not about Europe. It's not about China. And if anyone who's ever been to China, we are in a trade war with them. They do not respect anybody except themselves. And it's just a problem. But back to Second Amendment, you can't step back at all. It's 100%, Second Amendment rights. And it's sort of like free speech, okay? In free speech, you should never impact free speech unless someone's saying, I'm going to kill him. That's, everybody knows that, fire in a movie theater, things like that, the common sense ones. But everybody has the right for free speech, like to go on your program and say something stupid and make a fool of themselves.
You have every right, though it's sometimes not advisable.
Yeah. So let's give the people that are off their rocker, let's give them more microphones so we can all see, like Texas, this guy that's running for Senate from the Democrat side. I'm sorry, but there aren't, what do you say, 5 sexes?
He's crazy.
Yeah, the guy's nuts. And, now,
Tellerico is his name.
And the Democrats are going to put a couple $100 million behind him. It's just it's a total waste of money.
Good thing he's not raising livestock.
He'd be a sheep farmer, right?
Some confusion.
Well, no,
Sorry.
I mean,
I had to say it.
Not to get off topic, but this is the guy that, like, at one point he said his whole campaign, none of them were going to eat meat. And then he realized that he was running for office in Texas, and he just needed to have a steak.
Well, if we keep it up, we're not gonna, we're gonna have a lot less cattle in Texas too.
Okay, so another question I have for you is, you've got 11 people running for one office, 11 if you count the Democrat. At least that's the last number I heard. We're still in the filing period, so we don't know exactly who's going to actually file for office.
Sure.
And all of them, all 10 of them anyway, claim to be Republicans. Now, one of the things that I talk about a lot on the program is we have a group called traditional Republicans, and then there's platform Republicans and constitutional Republicans. Where are you at in that whole spectrum?
I'm old school. I'm just solid Republican. I don't want to deal with the nonsense. I think that all of it is just an ability to shave off of our humanity and our morality in order to make our communities get away from God, get away from morality. I don't understand it at all. Like, I can't put myself into the logical thought process of the Liberal Party right now, or the Democrats.
Well, who knows what those crazy people are doing.
I mean, that being said, Reagan always talked about a big tent. I'd like the Republican Party to go along with our platform. I'd like people to be America first and understand that the rest of the world isn't on our side, and that we have to be on our own side. But it is upsetting to me to see, and I'm able to see it because I'm not in with any of those particular groups. I'm not taking one of the different fractions of the Republican Party's side. I would really like to see everybody just get along and let the voters decide, who they're going to elect.
But don't you? I mean, you say that you want everybody to get along, but don't you think that there's some fights worth having?
Oh yeah, there's always some place you gotta stick it in. You gotta plant the flag and go after what you morally believe in. You also have to, when you're done, forgive those that don't believe with you. And at some point, in order to move forward, you need people with you that agree with you on the majority of your ideas. And if you can I would like it if the three of us could go in and, change some stuff in Congress and be 3-0 votes. But the fact is we've got, a 50-50 Congress, and we'll be lucky if we retain it. We got to work real hard to do so. I think we will. But, you can't just go in and use, put the whole platform forth and move it. What you have to do, and what I think that the liberal movement has been so good at in the last 20 years, is incrementally moving.
Absolutely.
And we've got to incrementally move back.
Okay, now I took a look at your website last night, and you've got like three main focus areas, I guess. And one of them is making America great again, secure our borders, grow the economy. Now, it's pretty easy for a Republican candidate to say, well, I want to make America great again, because it immediately puts you into the Trumposphere. All right. Are there any things that President Trump has done that you disagree with?
There are. I think he should have gone quicker into Iran.
Okay.
I mean, I completely agree with everything he's doing in Iran. I just think that he's trying to be a good person with people that aren't good people. And he's making good decisions based upon that. But I think President Trump makes very good decisions. I think he listens to everyone in the room. I think that some people feel he doesn't listen, but I think he does. And he'll listen to the people in the room like a good executive would. And then he makes a good decision moving forward. I think that, again, Congress was pushing back on the war powers. And I think he was trying to get this deal done. He had other countries telling him, right now he's got other countries telling him, don't go bomb a bridge, don't go, bring this forward. But I think that Iran doesn't respect the negotiating process. And I think it's become clear. And I think he's probably frustrated with the people telling him to wait, because he is a good executive. Good executives make decisions. They don't stand in the bullets. They run through them. So, there's always going to be times when you don't 100% agree with somebody. But again, you talk about 11 people, right? Football team. Congress is a football team. And we need to work together. And if you get somebody on that football team that's disrupting the plays, or you're fighting with the coach or whatever, you're not going to move forward, and we're not going to get that incremental move forward. And then the massive leap that comes every once in a while. So we need to stick together, and we need to support each other to move forward. We can't have, the unfortunate thing is you get, congressmen here and there, not to name any, that go out and want to perform, or they want attention. So they disrupt the whole process. And then, like a disruption in Congress can mean that you can't get your goals accomplished because you've wasted a day. You only have so many days a year, and you waste 5 because one of these guys does something. Just one person can, throw a cog in that wheel and just stop the whole thing.
All right. So we've got just a few minutes left. But one of the last item on your list that we haven't talked about is grow the economy.
Yeah.
So a couple questions here. Is it government's place to grow the economy, and how should government grow the economy if it is their place?
Well, step number 1 is get out of the way.
Okay.
All the red tape. I mean, you've got red tape in the processing of meat. You've got red tape in, the wells that Tanya Chapman, a judge from D.C., took away after 12 years.
Love her.
Man, I can go on forever. You know what she did? She took away the windmills off of Cape Cod in Massachusetts because the liberals didn't like them. I mean, just crazy stuff like that. But I've got answers to these things, and one of them is a Repair Act. It's something that they abandoned. Barrasso had another similar thing, but it's not the same. It doesn't do what I'm talking about, and I know how to do it because of practicing law and suing the government. 1, there's no statute of limitations to stop the nonprofits from suing, something that was permitted 12 years ago. You know that, the pipelines, because you worked in that. So you need to have 120 days to challenge. You need to have mandatory mediation that results in not just when she ruled, and the result is there's no decision.
Yeah.
It never happened 12 years later. And all that capital, all the assets, so we need to have mandatory mediation, so the judge can't just stop it like that. The judge has to say, okay, this is wrong, go fix it. Then you got 90, 120 days for the parties to get together, the government and whoever's applying for these leases, to get together and fix it. And there's so many areas that needs to happen with NEPA. It needs to not just happen for oil fields, it needs to happen for the little rancher, who wants to put a water right on federal property. So you've got both of those things going on. So we talked about, and jurisdiction. Why is a lady in D.C. deciding something in Wyoming that's 100% within the border of Wyoming that massively affects, the rancher that you said maybe he shouldn't listen to the guy in Jackson?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think you should listen, but you should work with me because here's the deal. I'm successful. I've proven that. And I know that if we can get jurisdiction away from D.C. and back out to Wyoming, that we can get his bonus mineral rights. So, hey, everybody in Wyoming, if you own land, we need to fix this because you need your bonus rights, you need your extraction rights, and the state of Wyoming needs their mineral fees as well. And that goes, there's another problem that we can talk about too. This is another one that I know that needs to be fixed. The extraction fee, and I wrote it down because it was sort of interesting. Maybe I have it right here. The extraction fee on coal was 12.5%.
Right, the mineral royalty.
Went down to 7.5%. So when you figure that out, we used to get 50% of 12.5, which is 6.25.
Right.
And this is too far in the weeds, but we need to change the rate that we get so that we get about 90% of it like Alaska does, because we're going to lose $50 million a year in coal extraction fees. And you times that by 10 years, that's 500 million. And you guys were talking about property taxes earlier. That's one of the ways you reduce property taxes, and it really is important. And think about the effect of those 6,500 wells on property taxes, on the burden to people in Wyoming, plus the bonus fees to everybody who would have gotten it.
All right. Well, we pretty much run out of time.
Yeah.
If my viewers want to get a hold of you, how do they do
that? Chapman for Congress. Just go online, check us out. We're on Facebook. There's a phone number there. You can call me. You can send an email. But I'm here and I want to listen. I want to know what your issues are so that I can be ready to help you with those.
All right. Well, Frank, I appreciate you taking the time.
It's great to meet you.
Yeah, it's great to meet you too.
Thanks, sir.
Yep. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by Representative Pepper Ottman. I've got a lot of favorites in the Wyoming House. But anyway, Pepper's going to join us in just a second. Back in a minute. Are you sick to death of being told what to think? Maybe you don't even realize that it's happening. Freedom Caucus bad, big spending, big government, liberal, Republican good. Conservatives are bad and they want to starve little children. I have heard it all, my friends. We are way past the time when the news was just the news, if it ever was. But wouldn't it be nice if you had a news platform that was at least honest about what they were telling you? News on the news page, opinion on the opinion page. That's exactly what the Open Range Record is. Go to the website, openrangerecord.com. News, analysis, opinion, and investigative journalism. One more time, that website is openrangerecord.com. You can listen and watch Cowboy State Politics live on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble every Tuesday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pay attention to all that other block-headed, Borg-like so-called news if you want. But if you want to get the real story, watch Cowboy State Politics live. And now, back to the program. Welcome back to the program. Cowboy State Politics Live on a Wednesday, burning through another 2-hour program. Well, if you're just joining the show, make sure that you listen to the podcast this afternoon. Well, not this afternoon. Might be. Shortly after I finish today's program. I'm going to republish replay the interview with Frank Chapman that we just finished. Interesting fellow. I think it was a interesting interview, to say the least. Well, joining me now in the studio is Representative Pepper Ottman. Pepper, welcome to the studio.
Good morning, David. It's so good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's what are you in town for?
I was in town for a hospital association seminar for all of the board members and CEOs around the state.
Oh, and what did you find out?
Well, one thing I found out yesterday, there was a speaker that put out, there was trainings for running meetings, and a book they used was called Navigating the Boardroom, and it was 40 maxims that was presented. It was very interesting. I thought we really need this in the legislature, and also it was very orderly about respect and not going on and on and on.
Oh, really?
And yeah, it was very good, and I saw a lot of people were very surprised.
You know, if you started that in the legislature, none of you would have a history degree from Representative Harshman. I mean, God, that guy goes on for forever.
Yes, he does.
So, Pepper, I'm so glad you're here because I've been wanting to talk to you about this. Now, it appears that the Judiciary Committee wants to talk about an anti-SLAPP bill.
Yes.
So, what is that? What was your bill? Talk to me about that.
Well, the last 2 years I've run a bill, strategic lawsuits against public participation. And a couple years ago during an interim conversation about what topics, they said, well, Senator Case said, what would you like to talk about? And I said, fraudulent lawsuits. Well, I didn't get any speed about that at all.
Of course not.
So I ran a bill, and I had some people that heard what I said and came and said, you know what? That's very important. We know some people, we'd like to help you develop that. So over the course of the last 2 years, we did develop 2 bills, which the Senate didn't see as
worthy.
That's a very good way to put it. So the Senate Judiciary has taken that on, and they had the first meeting here a week or so ago. And I believe they're going to put it forward, but I would really hope that your audience and a lot of people would put the pressure on them to actually get something done.
Well, it was pretty disingenuous, Pepper. You know, that bill sailed through the House.
Yes.
And then it gets to committee, and they pretty well dismantled it.
Yes.
Then it didn't even make it to the floor.
Right.
And now the same people that dismantled it are the ones that are suggesting that maybe this is a good idea. It's infuriating.
Well, and one of the things that I find very interesting as well is we hear and have heard in so many different venues, Wyoming needs to develop things. Wyoming
solutions for Wyoming problems.
Yes. So now we're looking at this uniform committee to provide the framework for this bill, and they're giving all of the power in that. We need to look at 50 states and what all the 50 states have done. Well,
wasn't that the criticism against your bill?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. So it'll be interesting to see what they do, and honestly, I'm hoping that it will get in there, and if we need to amend it, that we will. Because the main thing is to get to these lawsuits, because people are being sued for all kinds of just ideas about things, and it's basically used, it's weaponizing the judiciary to ruin people, to break their assets, to keep them in court for 2 or 3 years. And it's been real interesting since it has come up before the Senate. I've seen 3 or 4 suits that all of a sudden have been disbanded. So
weird.
We're having some response already.
So, all right, describe for me. I mean, this is, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure my audience knows what a SLAPP lawsuit is, but just describe for me what exactly we're talking about. What is a strategic lawsuit? I mean, when you get down to it, give it to me bare bones.
Okay. Well, and honestly, until I said fraudulent lawsuits 2 years ago and someone spoke to me about it. I didn't know what a strategic lawsuit against public participation was. What it is that say you put out a postcard and you say during the election season, you say so and so voted against this.
We don't know anybody that would have to deal with this.
No, and they sue you. They have an attorney that will do it pro bono, yes. And so what they do is they just keep those court costs rising for you. It could be someone that says something. It could be somebody that goes to a meeting. It could be this show right now, somebody that sees something. We have a gentleman that's running around suing all kinds of people because you can find an attorney to, if you pay them, they're going to represent you. So this is to say, okay, let's go into a court before a judge and say, does this case have merit? Does it have merit? Do you really have some things to sue about? And present that. And they're saying, well, we have to be careful with discovery and we have to be careful with different things like that. But the thing is that if it has merit, then proceed and go for that. If it doesn't have merit, then this would be a time where that could be dismissed rather than going through the entire system. And I know in our county, one of the problems is that the judges are overscheduled. The attorneys don't really have enough time to look into their cases. So what this would do was provide a little bit more finalization of these cases. And the thing is that it doesn't squelch you. If it is said there's not a lot of merit here and you want to proceed, you certainly may. You certainly may. But at that time, you will be responsible for your own costs.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head that these types of lawsuits really are, they're an attack on the First Amendment.
Yes.
That I guess the way that I'm trying to put this is that it's not the verdict that people are after. It's the process that's the punishment.
Yes. And punishment is exactly.
Yeah, and you mentioned the guy that's running around. You get a lawsuit. You get a lawsuit. You get a lawsuit. Well, I can't imagine that any of them, if maybe even one or two of them, but I can't imagine they would all be successful or that they all have merit. I mean, it's not illegal to say something mean. It's illegal to say something that's untrue.
Right.
And it's another one of those things that we're told, well, that doesn't happen in Wyoming. Well, I mean,
Horse crap.
yes, it does. That, by the way, you don't have your headphones on, but I just played the Lloyd Larson saying horse crap. All right. So, Pepper, you're running for re-election.
Yes.
Do you have an opponent? What are you running on? Let's talk some politics.
Well, I have House District 34, which is in Fremont County, and it is the rural part of the county. The small communities of Du Bois, Pavilion, Jeffrey City, part of Riverton, part of Lander.
That's a pretty big
Kinnear.
district.
It is. I figured out it was about 200 miles by 60.
Wow.
So it is large. I had been looking, this will be my fourth term, and I've been looking to see, because you always want somebody maybe that will serve better or somebody that is really interested in serving and to go on with some other things. But I have not been able to do that. And then with the issues like the SLAP issue, but also now I am chair of the Labor Health Committee. And so, and one of the reasons I was here today is we have some directives now of things that I really believe we can get done that are not costly, and they're not growing government. They're dealing with the Board of Licensing, and they're dealing with regulations and dealing with bringing people into the workforce through career pathways and not squelching that. And I heard today that is one of the main problems, is there just isn't clear career pathways in the healthcare industry.
Okay, explain that, because I don't know that I'm following you.
Okay. For instance, CNAs, okay? If in order to become a nurse, you need to be a CNA first. Well, that's all well and good because that kind of goes. But one of the conversations today is if you want to get in there and be an LPN, there's no clear pathway. You cannot get a certification in Wyoming to have that 2 years in for an LPN.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, you just have to keep going towards an RN. So you really can't work and pay for your schooling and daycare and all those things and actually be in a viable position. We need that position. We need RNs, but RNs have a specific job classification. LPNs are right below that, and so they can provide services that CNAs cannot, and the CNA position also. There's like 4 different classifications of CNA, how you can grow through that. CNAs, CNA2, CNAMs, and all of those things. And what I'm looking at, along with the Ag Committee that I'm on now as well, is to say, okay, what is the Board of Licensing doing, and what are they standing against in order for us to help our people obtain objectives and goals and grow?
Okay, let me throw you a little bit of a curveball. It was, I guess it was announced yesterday, maybe the day before, but the Trump administration is not going to allow us to invest money for rural hospitals. So, question for you, being on the Labor and Health Committee, what could be done to help out rural hospitals, if anything?
Well, I just heard in meetings today that yesterday that was decided. And what we had put forth in our application was to put part of the monies that we were looking at, it's $205 million per year for 5 years, so it's a little over $1 billion. Right. To put that into an account where we could earn things and keep those processes going. With the rural hospitals, I believe that one of the main things we can do is provide workforce, which is what we were just talking about. So I believe we have to change the education processes within the community college, open up some certifications, and the rural hospitals. Honestly, David, I'm in the middle of learning a lot about them. So.
All right. Well, and it's, Wyoming is, I don't know that it's one of those problems that's unique to Wyoming, but it's certainly one that, we face. That, and here's what I mean by that. That Wyoming's a pretty spread out place, and there are a lot of communities that really they're out in the middle of nowhere.
Yes.
And if you have a medical emergency, I'm a diabetic, so it's pretty important for me to be around a place where, there's a clinic or a hospital. Well, some of these communities, it's like an hour drive,
right.
or 2 hours, or maybe you got to get a helicopter. So I think it's an important topic. I think it's one that, frankly, I think the free market is always the solution, but maybe in this case, maybe we got to have some cash.
Well, we looked at some things yesterday, and there was conversation about one fellow said that he had heard years ago that what we need in Wyoming is 5 major hospitals and 20 helicopters.
Okay.
And so that was something that everybody kind of had the reaction that you do. But what I'll say also is that we need to be more health-minded, for one, with the people in Wyoming. But also, if you have a major health problem, I wouldn't move to Jeffrey City.
Probably not.
Just honestly, we need to look at things rationally. I believe that the clinics, we're seeing more and more clinics, and I believe that those are a good idea.
That's good.
I do as well. One, you don't have all the infrastructure costs and all of those things, but it's a conversation that is going to be going on. And healthcare is a reason also that people move to places. They want to make sure that there's hospitals for babies, that there's hospitals for different things. Along with the baby situation, OBGYN has been a real problem in the state of Wyoming.
Why is that?
Well, I think part of it is malpractice insurance. They're being charged extreme amounts and lawsuits and things. The other thing is we don't have as many babies being born. I heard this morning that Wyoming is having the largest graduation class of high schoolers that is projected to go down now.
Wow.
So and then of course we have lots of abortions, and the chemical drugs that can come through and facilitate that. So we're having that. The other thing is, and it's not only in the maternity. Let me just say first, we are looking at doulas and midwives and certifications for those and how those can grow.
Okay.
So that is something that I believe is really going to be advantageous for young women without problem pregnancies.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing is that we were talking, it's like, okay, let's build up our hospitals. Okay. But are our people going to come here? Or are they going to go to Fort Collins? Or are they going to go to Utah? And one of the things that came up was the doctors at larger cities have more procedures that they do, which hones their skills and makes them better in their profession. So if we had a specialist here that did 5 procedures a week, or we could drive somewhere else and had a physician that had 5 or 8 a day, where are we going to go for that procedure? So there's so much conversation. One of the things, and I don't know that it'll be very popular, but we have 580,000 people approximately. We are not going to have everything that a
At our
state,
fingertips.
right. I mean, Denver has, 3 million people now? So
Felt like 10 yesterday
Yeah.
when I was driving through.
So, I mean, there's just reality checks, but I believe one of the things I enjoyed about being here today and that in Sheridan is that I was able to hear long-term care people talk in a situation where they were voicing, these are the problems we're having and how we can, because they weren't on a Zoom call. They didn't have to worry about being quoted or
Right.
sued or fired. And it was so good. So I really appreciate all those people that opened up today.
One last thing we have to talk about. Every time that I head to Jackson, I go through what I call the Kinnear Corner. And that's the corner where you go from Pavilion, and then it comes to a T in the road. And I think the sign says Du Bois this way, Pavilion that way. Well, there was always a sign there, and it said something like United States for sale, call Hunter Biden. I want to know when that guy is going to put up a new sign right on that corner. Do you know him?
I do know him, and I'm not exactly sure. He also had that sign just a little bit north of there on a huge hay bale. So, yeah, we'll talk to him about it.
All right. Well, I've taken so many pictures of that sign, and then I went through there. Oh, it was a couple months ago, and no sign. So I was horribly disappointed.
Yes,
All right.
he's very interesting. I've been trying to get him to possibly run for a commission or some kind of a job. He's got a lot of good ideas and a lot of comments. So.
All right. Well, Pepper, I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us.
Thank you,
You're running for re-election. If people want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
People can call me at my phone, 307-851-7711. You can reach me at my legislative email, pepper.ottman, O-T-T-M-A-N, no O in there.
No Ottoman.
No Ottoman, at wyoleg.gov. And I'm working on campaign, also Facebook. I'm on Facebook.
A lot.
But yes, but I would encourage people to give a call, and because comments are very good. We don't always hear everything in committee, and there's limited time, but there's also, like I said, the limitation that people feel comfortable or the time constraints. So I'm always open to hear from people, and I'm looking forward to another session. So we'll.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it, Pepper. That'll about do it for today's installment of the program. Thank you very much for watching. And we'll be back tomorrow with Jillian Balow is going to be on the show. That'll be fun. See you tomorrow.